So the title for this video is Shit NRA Supporters Say, and you're going to watch this video and you're going to be a little bit disappointed because this is not how the meme actually works. Instead, it's going to be a dialectic back and forth between me and actual comments from actual NRA supporters. Why don't we ban cars, knives, and hammers? All of those are just as lethal as an assault rifle. Okay, well if that's true, then why do you need an assault rifle if you already have a hammer, a car, or a knife? You can't possibly defend yourself against a handgun if all you have is a hammer. That's why you need an assault rifle. Duh. What about like a semi-automatic assault hammer? You know, like a semi-automatic Thor hammer, it swings itself. I bought one recently. I didn't want to go through the waiting period or the background check, so I went to a hammer show and bought one on a private sale, just an exchange between me and a Norse god's weapons collector. And the sale is totally legal. I didn't have to have a background check or have a waiting period. I have it right now. The wonderful thing about assault rifles is that you don't need one until they try to take it away. Ha! Well, I've preempted them by not having one to start with. They'll never be able to take mine. But seriously, what you're saying is you need a semi-automatic weapon to defend yourself from the tyranny of government, right? The idea that you're going to defend yourself against a national military force that has access to nuclear weapons, bunker buster nukes, small-scale nuclear missiles, signature strike predator drone missiles, tomahawk missiles, LRAD, microwave guns, all at their disposal, that you're going to defend yourself from all of these things with like you and your buddies and an assault rifle. It just seems to me like it's a paranoid fantasy detached from reality, but maybe that's just me. Even if you had access to things that you currently don't have access to, like a 50 cal mounted on a tank, you still wouldn't be able to defend yourself against the tyranny of government. My personal advice to you is that you should probably stop watching so much Alex Jones. There's a reason nobody invades Switzerland, and that's because modern military tactics are focused around polycentric warfare. When every man and woman has a gun, not even the greatest military can hold an occupation. Actually, I'm pretty sure the reason why nobody's invading Switzerland is we can't run our cars using chocolate as a fuel. This argument's totally fallacious. Not not like fellatio, but like it's based on fallacy. Your argument is based on the following false corollary. 1, nobody's invaded Switzerland for a while. 2, a lot of people in Switzerland have guns. But you can't draw the conclusion then that the reason why nobody invades Switzerland is because in Switzerland they have a lot of guns. That's a completely false corollary. You have to look at every nation that has guns, and every nation that has been invaded, and every nation that hasn't been invaded. Because certainly in Iraq, everybody has a gun. Everybody and their grandmother has a gun in Iraq, but that didn't stop us from invading. Everybody and their grandmother in Afghanistan has a gun, and that didn't stop us from invading. Also, the hilarious thing about this argument is that it presupposes that every nation out there is just chomping at the bit to invade Switzerland, and that the only reason why Switzerland has been able to defend themselves against these seething hordes of nations ready to invade is because people have guns in their households in Switzerland. But everybody in Switzerland needs to defend their nation so that the marauding hordes don't come and take all of their Swatch watches and army knives. Probably their hot cocoa. Besides that, there's a lot of countries that haven't been invaded in a while, and many of them have all but banned guns. Take England, for example. Nobody's invaded England recently. In fact, they were the ones doing a lot of invasion for a while there, if you remember that. Maybe the real reason why nobody's invaded England recently is because brute force colonialism, a lot like the Second Amendment, is an antiquated concept that isn't really equipped for dealing with the realities of today's modern society. And just like neo-colonialism, rather than using brute force and invading and occupying a country, instead uses trade policy, international finance, debt in order to control foreign governments and to extract resources. Today's interpretation of the Second Amendment is also very different from the state-run National Guard forces equipped with muskets that were envisioned by the authors of the Second Amendment. I have a right to a gun. It's in the Constitution. Well, first off, the Constitution is a contract between the citizens and the government. And there was a lot of stuff that the Founding Fathers got wrong. Like, I don't know, slavery, or women not being able to vote, or people who don't own property not being able to vote, that black people, simply for the color of their skin, only count as 3/5 of a human being. That's in the Constitution still. I mean, it was annulled, but it's still in there. And some of our founding fathers at the time actually made the argument, why should we count them as even being 3/5 of a person at all in our national census? I mean, why don't we take a census on every cow and every horse and every sheep? They actually said this. And yet, many would have you believe that these founding fathers are like imbued with holy powers like given to them by Jesus, that they're the 12 apostles of Jesus America, that every founding father is an infallible pope unto himself, completely beyond reproach or questioning. What's also weird, the gun, which is a piece of hardware, like, I don't know, a stove or a washing machine or a sink or a TV, it's a product that's made. It's a piece of hardware. It's the only product for sale on the open market that's imbued with the holy powers of the Constitution founding father, Jesus America apostles. There's no other product that enjoys that sort of treatment. Do you have like a right to own a stove or like a cast iron frying pan? Do you have a right to an iPad, right to Wi-Fi, right to a computer, right to a house? How about things that people actually need? Do you have a right to health care, to medical care? Do you have a right to a home? Do you have a right to food? Do you have a right to clean drinking water? Apparently not, but you have a right to a gun, and that's supposed to be comforting somehow. The right to vote? You don't really even have like an expressed right to vote. Like we think that we have a right to vote, and we make sure that we exercise our right to vote, but we don't have our right to vote written down anywhere in the Constitution. We don't have an expressed right to vote. Obviously, we should feel great about that because guns are imbued with magic. If you banned guns, it would create a black market and then you'd just have more guns. Just look at the drug trade. Prohibition doesn't work. Except that you can't make a meaningful analogy between drugs and guns. Most drugs come from plants, and plants grow in the dirt. They grow from seeds. They're living things. They're part of nature. And the thing about nature is nature's everywhere. With guns, though, you can't plant bullets and then grow an AK-47. It doesn't work that way. Guns, like iPads and frying pans and stoves and automobiles, are a technology, and they require a human being to spend a lot of time in a machine building well-engineered parts and then putting those well-engineered parts together so that it doesn't explode in your fucking face and blow your face off. Now, I don't advocate the banning of all guns, but if we did, let's go down that hypothetical road real quick. It's always fun to entertain ideas just for the sake of argument. So if guns were banned, the price of a gun on the black market would put it out of the price range of most criminals, because supply would have suddenly disappeared, and as such, pretty much nobody would be able to afford one. But what about people building their own black market guns? Well, if you have the thousands of dollars of machinery that you need to build your own semi-automatic weapons, make your own bullets, the amount of time that you would have to spend in order to build all of these things, at least on any scale large enough to affect the market, it would be insane. Like, the amount of time that you would have to spend sitting at your bench machining parts for AK-47s, the amount of time that you would have to spend machining bullet cartridges, filling them with precise mixtures of black powder, and then placing the bullet in place. If you really wanted to do that on a scale big enough to affect the black market without being detected, it's just not possible. If you're going to be affecting the price of black market guns, you'd have to do so on an industrial scale, like how guns are being produced right now in large factories. At which point you're reaching a scale where it's really easy to detect by the authorities. The risk involved would also be huge, and like trafficking of other illicit substances, the price would skyrocket because of that. And just like illicit substances, there wouldn't be any testing, any regulation, any guarantee that your gun was actually going to be safe when you operate it, which means that lower quality guns would be on the market, kind of like how there's low quality drugs on the market and you just have to trust your source. And the guns that you'd end up purchasing on the black market would be highly inaccurate, likely to break or blow up in your face. Obama's kids have 11 armed guards when they go to school. My kids go to school in a gun-free zone. Okay. I'm not a fan of Obama. I voted for Jill Stein in the past election, but let's just stop and think about that for a second. Is there any reason that we can think of why Obama's kids might have armed guards accompanying them to school? Like, is there any reason that his kids might be a target for like kidnappers or terrorists or, you know, just an asshole? And yet at the same time they don't care about kidnapping your kids? Let's think about that for a second. There's gotta be some reason why Obama, the president of the United States, controller of the largest military in the world, why his kids would be a target. And you, an insurance adjuster from the middle of nowhere in Kansas, nobody gives a shit about your kids. Why is that? Why is that? Now it could be argued that if citizens were able to use their Second Amendment and carry a gun on a plane if licensed to do so, 9/11 would have never happened. Remember, it was box cutters that they took over the planes with, not guns. Okay, dude, if you fired a gun on a plane and it hit anywhere in the plane, the cabin would depressurize. And everybody would die of asphyxiation. Not to mention, in a crowded space like that, if everybody had a gun, the ensuing confusion and chaos, I think there would be a lot of holes throughout that cabin and a lot of innocent bystanders. It's not very likely that people would know who the actual bad guy is, because they'd be like, oh shit, that guy's got a gun, maybe he's the hijacker. Oh shit, that guy's also got a gun, let's shoot everybody who has a gun, and everybody who has a gun, which is everybody, would shoot everybody else who has a gun. I have a right to defend myself with anything I can get my hands on. Really? Really? Anything? Anything? But the thing is though, is if there was no guns on the market, this really wouldn't be an issue, would it? Because they wouldn't be readily available. Now, would they? Or do you think there really should not be any limits whatsoever? Like, what about a nuclear weapon? Or anthrax? Do you think that you should have access to anthrax? Do you think that you should be able to go and buy a rod of weapons-grade plutonium from your local Walmart? To paraphrase the NRA, if nuclear weapons were banned, then only criminals would have nuclear weapons. Except for that's complete bullshit, because you can't have a nuclear weapon right now, because those things are illegal and there's no market for them. And sure, you have a right to defend yourself, but not with nuclear weapons. So why should that extend to paramilitary equipment, like just assault rifles? What we're talking about here is what degree of regulation is appropriate. So let's have that conversation. Or we could continue to have the knee-jerk crazy conversation, because for me, it's a lot of fun to make fun of.
Killing you!